Wife had an affair with my friend and got pregnant. I raised their son believing he was mine. When I filed for divorce, my sister kept pressuring me to pay child support. So for context, my soon-to-be ex-wife, Allison 32 female and I 34 male, had been together for 5 years and married for 3 when I found out that she had been cheating on me with one of my friends. It had been an on and off affair since my friend stays out of state, and apparently they would only get together whenever he would be back here. Unfortunately, one of those times she ended up getting pregnant, and for the past few months, we have been raising her son together. I have been raising him believing him to be my child, when all along his father has been my friend and not me. Allison could have told me about it right from the beginning and done the decent thing, but she chose to keep this all a secret, and I never would have found out about any of this. But I came across some pretty incriminating emails on her laptop a couple of months ago. It was a conversation between her and my friend where he was telling her that he wanted nothing to do with her or the kid and wanted to end things with her because he was not ready to be a father or take up that kind of responsibility, and she was begging him not to do that, but he had his mind made up. After I came across that email, I put 2 and 2 together by reading through other emails and chats, and after confronting her, I decided to file for a divorce. It has been extremely emotionally draining for me, and the past couple of months have been difficult, but Allison has made it worse by trying to get child support out of me. Not just child support, she is also demanding a huge amount of alimony, and I'm just not ready to pay. So we have been fighting in court, and things have become very complicated and exhausting for me. She and her lawyer have been playing some pretty dirty games for the past couple of months, ever since I initiated the legal proceedings, and they're trying to get as much money as they possibly can out of me. But my lawyer and I have also been fighting back hard and getting people to testify in our favor, be it friends, family, or even co-workers, proving that we don't owe her anything. The waiting period is about to come to an end soon, and I really want to wrap this up as quickly as I possibly can. Since it has been almost 6 months since I filed for a divorce, things have become pretty drawn out because we live in a state where, regardless of the paternity, if a man was married to and has parented a kid with a woman, they are liable to be recognized as a legal parent of the child, and that's what we are struggling with right now. The only problem in the situation has been my older sister, Hannah 37 female, who has been acting very strangely and actually expects me to help Allison out. It all started a couple of weeks after I filed for divorce, and Allison decided that she was going to demand child support from me, even though I was not the legal father. She knew that I knew that, and it had even been proven in court, but she was trying to take advantage of the law and try to twist it in her favor. I thought that it was really unfair because, as it is, it was very difficult for me to come to terms with the fact that the son who I had been raising so far was not related to me at all. I was having to leave behind an entire family that I thought I had, my wife and my child, just so that I could start afresh. I have a normal job and a mediocre income, so I really did not think it was fair for Allison to demand child support from me, knowing that I could not afford to be spending money on a kid that was not even mine. It was harsh, but it was the truth, and I really wanted nothing to do with her or her son anymore after I had wasted almost a year of my life, including the pregnancy, on them anyway. Besides, she was the one who had cheated on me, so I did not understand why I needed to be punished for it. She had always relied on me for money because she had never taken her job seriously and was always overlooked for promotions, so she had been stuck in her job for a really long time. Her company did not really pay her well, and her position did not seem to improve with time. So she had always been heavily dependent on me for money, and while we were married, I did not have an issue with it. But now that I knew that she had been cheating and that her son had nothing to do with me, I did not think it was necessary for me to worry about her financial situation. I knew for a fact that she would end up struggling without me, but I couldn't bring myself to care about it, and I thought that it was fair enough. However, my sister thought that I was being heartless and told me as much. In the first couple of months, she would only try to convince me and keep telling me that Allison had kept in touch with her, and every time I would speak, she would be doing worse than before. Her financial situation was dire because even her parents had to look out for themselves, and the most they could do was offer her a place to live, but she had to contribute to the expenses, and it was becoming difficult for her to continue to afford a lawyer for everything. I had a pretty straightforward solution for that. She could simply just not drag out this whole legal mess and accept my terms. That way, She wouldn't even need a lawyer for long, but for some reason, even Hannah thought that I was being unfair and that since I had been raising the child for the past couple of months, I should continue to do so, even though he's not related to me by blood, and my refusal to do so as an indication of how heartless and selfish I am. I don't understand her logic, and to be honest, it's just been a few months. I was pretty attached to the kid when I thought he was our son, but now he just reminds me of the fact that my wife had been having an affair with my friend. I don't know if it's the right or wrong thing to do, but I know that I can't stand the idea of contributing to her expenses and paying child support, especially given the circumstances. So after a few fights, I just decided to cut Hannah out of my life because she kept siding with Allison, and it was getting really exhausting for me to deal with all of this. For a couple of weeks, she kept texting me and trying to call me, but I did not respond, and when it got too much to deal with, I decided to block her altogether.
But she did not even stop at that.
She gave it a rest for a couple of weeks, and I thought that it was almost over, but then she started showing up at my house. Not only that, she also started using other people's numbers to contact me and tell me that what I was doing was really wrong. Eventually, it got to where she was acting totally crazy and threatening to testify against me in court if I did not pay child support to Allison. It made absolutely no sense to me because from what I knew, it was not like they were particularly close. Neither did she stand to gain anything from this unless they had some arrangement that I was not aware of, which, as it turns out, was the case. Anyway, when she started to threaten me and say that she was going to testify against me in court if I did not pay child support, I really started to break down because this was my sister that we were talking about, and the fact that she did not seem to be on my side here, even though I was clearly the victim, just did not sit right with me. When I asked her for an explanation for all of this, she just told me that her maternal instincts had been going strong, and she just could not bear to see another mother in pain, struggling financially and trying to find her footing after I abandoned her, and that was why she was putting me through so much, just because of her so-called maternal instincts. It was shocking that her sisterly instinct had never seemed to kick in at any point. We got into really terrible arguments over this, to the point where our parents had to intervene and try to calm things down because the mudslinging had become too much to bear for the rest of the family. To be fair, she was the one who had started it. I didn't even want to publicize any of this, but she tried to make me look like the villain in front of the rest of the family as well. And for the record, I don't think it counts as abandoning a child that the child is not even yours. And more importantly, even if it is abandoning a child, that's for the courts to decide, and not her. As for Allison, I don't even think that I abandoned her at any point. She is the one who abandoned me when she started cheating on me without any reason, because as far as I know, I had never really given her valid reason to go out of her way to cheat on me. Even when I confronted her, she couldn't come up with a single reason to cheat on me, and that was it. So I really couldn't figure out for the life of me, why on earth was my sister siding with Allison until recently. A couple of days ago, she showed up at my house and I told her to go away, but she just started crying, and she told me that she really needed to talk to me and explain her behavior because she felt like she owed it to me and she just couldn't do this anymore. She sounded really upset and distressed, so I decided to let her in this time. For the past couple of weeks, we had had absolutely no contact after our last fight because our parents had told us both to stay away from each other since it was clear that we were not getting along anymore and it was becoming embarrassing for the family. It was almost over a month since I had last spoken to her or heard from her, and I was quite relieved without her. But when I heard her talking in that depressed voice outside my door, I couldn't help myself and I let her in because I really wanted to know what was actually going on, and it seemed like she was finally going to offer a real explanation. So I let her in and she totally broke down. She hugged me and told me that she was really sorry about everything that she had been putting me through because it had all been really selfish, and she confessed what I already knew, that those excuses that she had been coming up with about maternal instinct and stuff were all just that, excuses. Then she told me that she had to make a confession about the real reason, and she wanted me to forgive her and not judge her. She then proceeded to tell me that the real reason she had been hiding from Allison so far was because Allison knew about one of her biggest secrets. Apparently, Hannah is no better than Allison herself, because she also has a 3-year-old daughter with her husband, whom she has been with for almost 7 years and has been married to for 5 of those years, and yet she has never told him that she had cheated on him with one of her friends from college. When she had run into him at the union, and she and her husband had been going through a particularly difficult phase of their marriage, she had a short-lived fling with him, but she ended it soon after she found out she was pregnant. However, after her daughter was born, she got a couple of paternity tests conducted and found out that, unfortunately, the FOT other of her was not her husband, but the guy she had had that affair with. She had kept this a secret from everyone for a really long time, until Allison finally discovered this last year. Apparently, the guy that Hannah had had that affair with from her college is now married to one of Allison's cousins, and I even attended the wedding with her last year. But what I did not know was that while talking to her cousin, Allison had discovered that her cousin's husband had gone to the same college as Hannah, and when Allison brought that up with her cousin, she seemed to get upset. That's how Allison found out that Hannah had had an affair with this guy, and the reason he had was because he had found out that she was married, which she hadn't bothered to tell him. Thankfully, this guy seems to be a decent chap, and he had been very upfront with his wife Allison's cousin, and told him about his previous affair with Hannah. He had to tell her because even after he had ended the affair, she continued to reach out to him periodically and would try to get him to be a part of her life again because she was still having a troublesome phase with my brother-in-law. This behavior continued throughout her pregnancy, and even a couple of months after that, until she finally realized that he was not coming back and she stopped reaching out to him. She hadn't even told the guy about the paternity test, so he had no idea that he had a daughter, and my brother-in-law thought that he had a daughter, but in reality that was not his child. It was all very messed up, and on top of that, I realized that Allison had never mentioned any of this to me. Even though this was my sister that we were talking about, Hannah told me that after finding out about her affair, once she had attended her cousin's wedding, she came back and confronted Hannah about it, and she had to admit the truth. But shockingly, they actually ended up bonding over it because even Allison had been pregnant at the time, and she suspected that the baby was not really mine, and since Allison had promised to keep her secret, Hannah had decided to trust her and had even told her about her daughter's real paternity. It was very disturbing that they had bonded over something like this, but what's worse was that now Allison had turned it all around and was using that information against Hannah. And apparently that was why Hannah had been acting so strangely with me for the past couple of months and trying to get me to agree to Allison's terms, because she was threatening to expose her to her husband and even tell her that their daughter was not really his. Obviously, Hannah does not want that to happen anymore, because she has managed to fix things with her husband, and the affair and stuff is a thing of the past. She does not want to put her marriage and her daughter's life at stake, but unfortunately Allison already knows too much, and that's why she had me threatening her, trying to get me to agree to her terms. She had been trying to keep this up for the past 6 months, but now it was just getting way too much for her to handle, and she decided that her best bet would be to just come clean to me and tell me the truth, and then maybe I would help her out. What's the most shocking about this was that, firstly, she had actually expected me to help her out after everything that she had told me, which just proved that she was just as terrible as Allison, if not more. What was even more shocking was that she had been stupid enough to trust Allison with all her secrets, even after finding out that Allison had been cheating on me and was obviously not a good or trustworthy person. But then again, I guess birds of a feather do flock together, so it worked out exactly the way it should have. Anyway, after hearing her out, I was really shocked, and I told her that I wanted nothing to do with her, that she was a disgusting person, and that whatever was going to happen to her, she totally deserved it. She started to break down, but did not argue with me, and I told her to leave the house, and she did. The only thing that she requested of me was not to tell my brother-in-law about anything that she had just told me, but I'm not sure I can do that. I guess at this point, he is the only person who will be able to understand what I'm going through. More importantly, it's just a decent thing to do. I'm not Allison, who is going to use this information against Hannah at any point as leverage, as somebody who has been tricked. I wouldn't want that to happen to anybody else, and I think it's my moral duty to tell him the truth. But at the same time, it's really none of my business. So now, whipped for telling my brother-in-law that my sister had had an affair, and he's not the real father of their baby. Update 1. Thank you so much to everybody who responded to my post, and for those of you who are wondering, yes, I did it. I knew that it was the right thing to do. I was just waiting for reassurance because I knew that it was going to be a difficult conversation to have. I knew that it broke my heart when I got to the truth, but ultimately I had to find out so that I could do what was best for me and for my brother-in-law. He has been raising his daughter for 3 years, believing her to be his own. I'm sure it couldn't have been easy for her to find out, but I knew that I had to tell him, so I contacted him a couple of hours ago, and I told him to come over because I wanted to talk to him in person. These are not things that can be discussed over the phone anyway. So he came by after work, probably thinking that I was here to talk about divorce and ask him for support or something. He started to tell me that he had heard about my fight with my sister, and he really did not want to get involved in stuff. But I had to stop him, and I just ripped off the band-aid because I did not know how else to do it. It really hurt me to do it as well because for a couple of seconds, he could not even process what I had said and was in total denial. He kept insisting that whatever I was saying just couldn't be true, that he knew for the fact that she would never be disloyal to him and that Hannah would never lie to him about his daughter. At the very least, he told me that even if he believed me I was telling him the truth about her affair, he refused to believe that she was lying to him about the paternity of her daughter and wasn't just lying to him right now. She had been lying to him for 3 years. He refused to believe me, but then when I told him that was the truth, he broke down. Something inside of him just snapped, and he started sobbing like crazy, and I could do nothing but just be there for him. Mind you, he and I are not particularly close, but at that moment, I felt like he was family to me, even more than Hannah herself. He was actually shaking while crying, and I could feel what he was feeling. To be honest, I tried to console him, but honestly, I really couldn't come up with words that would be enough to console him. I hadn't even been able to do it for myself. How could I possibly do it for him? Anyway, he was not in a state to respond for a couple of minutes, and then he started to tell me that he had always suspected that she had a thing with one of her college friends, because she would talk about him a lot and constantly compare the two of them, and they would even fight about him, but she had always reassured him that there was nothing going on there, and honestly, even if there had been something there, he was totally over it because now, ever since their daughter had been born, he knew for a fact that both of them had been dedicated to each other as parents and his partners. But the one thing that he had never suspected was his daughter not being related to him. I told him that he could still get another paternity test conducted because we didn't need to just blindly trust whatever Hannah was telling us. But honestly, both of us knew that it was going to be pointless. Neither would Hannah lie to me at this point, nor would I lie to him. The paternity test would only prove what we already knew for a fact. It was just wishful thinking. He told me that it was not going to change anything between him and his daughter, and she was still going to be his little girl, because whether she was his blood or not, it did not change the fact that he had been raising her for the past 3 years. The only thing that he was hurt about was that Hannah had never told him the truth, and this is how he had to find out from me. After being together for so long, the least that she could have done for him, and what she really owed him, was at least the truth. After talking to me for a bit, he started breaking down again, and I really felt terrible for the guy. I actually started to feel bad for having told him at all, and I started to regret my decisions, but then I guess he had to find out at some point, and somehow. If not me, maybe Allison would have told him, and she wouldn't even have been there for him the way I was being there for him right now. She would have done it out of spite and for revenge. Maybe that's why Hannah had to come clean to me with the truth, because she knew that I was going to tell my brother-in-law. But at least I wouldn't do it the way Allison would. She just didn't want to have to do it herself. I guess it was pretty cowardly, but I guess by now we have established the fact that she is definitely a coward. Anyway, he spent about an hour and a half at my place, and by the time he was ready to leave, he was still upset, but at least he was not sobbing. I offered to drive him back home, because I did not think that was a good idea for him to be alone at the moment. But he insisted that he drive himself because he needed some time and space to clear his head. He thanked me for telling him the truth about what was going on and said that he was going to go home and confront Hannah. And I'm sure that he did, because my parents just reached out to me a couple of minutes ago to tell me that Hannah had decided to come back home, and she had refused to tell them anything, but I told them to talk to me if they wanted to find out what was going on. So even now I had to be the bad guy and rip off the band-aid for somebody else, because she was too much of a coward to tell them what she had done. I did it. I told my parents what had happened a couple of days ago when Hannah had told me the truth about why she had been siding with Allison all along, and then I told them that today I had told my brother-in-law about what Hannah had been up to behind his back. So I was guessing that she had either been kicked out or had chosen to leave, but either way, she was not going back and they were probably going to head for a divorce. My parents were naturally quite upset because my divorce was going to be finalized in a couple of weeks, and now they had another one to deal with. I could understand why they were upset, but at least in my situation, I was the victim. I can't say the same for Hannah. Unfortunately, we talked for a couple of minutes, and they told me that Hannah had refused to even say a word to them ever since she had come back home, and had just shut the door and refused to come out. At first, it had made sense then, but now that they knew what had happened, they knew that she was probably not going to be coming out speaking to them normally for a really long time because she was probably ashamed of herself, and she should be after everything that she has done, not just to her husband but also to her brother. She really should be ashamed of herself. Anyway, now that all of this is out of the way, I have my own divorce to worry about as well because we have to wrap everything up in a couple of weeks, and I'm actually really nervous about what is going to happen. Update 2. So I'll try to keep it short in this one because I have to get back to some important work, but my divorce finally got finalized earlier today. I haven't felt this happy and relieved in a really long time, and I'm going to celebrate once I get home. That's for sure. I'm mostly just happy that I got the divorce on my terms. I don't have to pay any alimony because she cheated, and I guess my side was more convincing. I also do not have to pay any sort of child support because the child is not mine, and I managed to prove that if my wife handles her money carefully, she will definitely be able to do it on her own. And even if she isn't able to do that, she has a family to help her out. And since my absence is not really going to do the baby any particular harm, probably won't even be able to remember me. In a couple of months, I get to stay out of this, just like I wanted to. I do still get to keep in touch with our son, but that's completely up to me. I don't have to visit or have anything to do with either of them if I don't want to, but I haven't made up my mind about that yet. I'm going to think about it and come to a conclusion later. Now, coming to my brother-in-law and Hannah, they are also getting divorced, and he has already filed for it and she has been served. But he has demanded shared custody of their daughter and absolutely no child support or alimony or any sort of maintenance, and he is firm on that. So good for him. I hope things work out for him, because he deserves better. Hannah is still staying with our parents, which means that I can't visit them for a while, but it's okay. I'll just stick to speaking to them on the phone. They are not very happy about what's going on, but well, there's nothing that we can do about it at this point. Update 3. Hey everyone, it has been several months since my last update, and I know I have been inactive, but I just logged in here to tell you guys that a couple of weeks back, my brother-in-law finally got his divorce finalized on his terms, and he and Hannah are officially done.
Now.
I guess technically he's not my brother-in-law anymore, and we are not related, but we have remained friends. The fact that we have been through similar situations in the recent past has led to our friendship, and I value this. He has already moved to the suburbs with his daughter, and Hannah gets to see their daughter on the weekends according to their arrangement. She's not very happy about it, but well, there's not much that she could do about it either because he was very firm about what he wanted and good for him, he got what he wanted, and so did I. I can't say that life has been perfect, but things are looking up for me now, and I'm even considering taking up a job out of state, so I can have a change of environment. Things have changed and I have been through a lot, but I'm looking forward to the future so I can put everything behind me now, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hopefully this time, everything will work out for the best.